Hello, everybody. Today is day 187, and we're reading from 2 Kings chapter 14 and 2 Chronicles chapter 25. Now, we witness again and again how kings often started out well in their kingdom rule, and then they ended tragically. We see this evidenced in the lives of kings, but it's also true even in the lives of the common people. And so this becomes a warning to all of us. It's not how you start, but how you finish the race. Amaziah is such a king. He became king at the age of 25. He did, as the Bible says, what was right in God's eye, but, and here's this exception, not with a loyal heart. Now that has a lot of ramifications, because it would suggest that he was following God, he was doing what was right, but there was something in his heart that eventually led to his downfall. And we'll cover that in just a minute, because he did not have a loyal heart with God. He, like so many, refused to tear down the high places. Now I think there's something contingent upon this. That is, what was it about these high places the kings refused? Oftentimes they would do everything else right, and then they refused to go and take care of these pagan centers. And somehow in that compromise, in that doorway it was a gateway of seduction that would get a hold of them. And as they had given ground over to foreign gods and pagan traditions and practices, it seemingly somehow got a hold of them as well. He formulates an army, King Amaziah formulates an army of 300,000 men to attack the Edomites. Now this is good and well, and God is in this, but then he pays for 100,000 men from Israel to join him, the 100,000 soldiers from Israel to join him. But a prophet comes along. He's a man of God, and he says, don't let the army of Israel go with you. This was a direct warning from God that he was not to do this. In fact, he tells the king that he's not with Israel. God has, and he warns the king by a couple of very powerful phrases of punch. He says God has the power to help or the power to overthrow. And then he says, that when he complained about, when he complained about the revenue that he had spent, and that he was potentially going to lose that if he didn't follow through on having the soldiers from Israel come, the prophet then responds, the Lord is able to give you much more than this. And so really what the prophet was saying to the king is, stop limiting God. And this is always so hard to do, isn't it? So the king successfully defeats the Edomites. God is with him. They conquer and they defeat. And it's interesting that the man of God said, though, don't let Israel go, for the Lord is not with them. And so all of these, and that's why there's so many things you begin to pull out that we find in the scriptures that give us clues and insights as to what was going on in the nature of the nation. Now, here's something crazy, that Amaziah is seduced by foreign gods. This is why I say he gave ground. He didn't have a loyal heart, because it says this, you have sought the gods of the people which could not rescue their own. And so he's basically saying, you sought the gods of the people, and those gods couldn't rescue them from you. The Edomite gods couldn't rescue them from you, and now you're serving these gods, and you're bringing them back, and you're bowing down to them. And so God's anger is aroused, and the language we hear is that God is becoming very disturbed by the king's behavior. So the prophet comes, another prophet, a man of God, warns the king as he tells the king that he's going to be destroyed if he continues. But proud King Amaziah invites the king of Israel to a foolish duel. Now, obviously, the king of Israel calls him out on this and says, listen, you beat the Edomites, and now you're very proud. You had this cocky, arrogant heart. But he wouldn't listen. And so sure enough, they go ahead. Israel defeats Judah. They go and they ransack Jerusalem and the wall around Jerusalem, and take much of the gold and precious items from Judah. And all of that could have been avoided, but pride got in the way. All of these are lessons for us of how important it is for us to tear down the high places, not to give ground to the enemy. Don't give the enemy an opportunity, because like many of these great kings, of which they started out well, in which the Bible even tells us in this passage that he did serve God, he did follow God, but not with a loyal heart. And all of this is a warning for you and I, that we make sure that we are fully yielded, devoted, dedicated, and willing to obey God in all things.